Alighting from the carriage, the party was met with the imposing sight of Castle Ravenloft up close. The doors swung open as they approached, and just inside, the party was greeted by the strange hooded figure who had beckoned them first to this cursed land, and subsequently to this castle. He introduced himself as Rahadin. The party walked and chit-chatted with him as he guided them through the castle to his master. All the while, as they strolled through the castle, eerie organ music began to crescendo until Rahadin swung open the doors to the dining hall, at which point the organ music boomed through the room and into the hall. From the opposite side of the room, the party saw a dark and brooding man facing away from them, hammering away at the keys until suddenly he stopped. The man began to turn towards the party as silence filled the dining hall. Strahd nonetheless beckoned the party to take their seats, as they were his honored guests. Wanting to look gentlemanly in front of the women present, Giles reached over the table and offered a handshake, which was not accepted. Strahd said, "Allow me to introduce myself," but Otto interrupted, offering to introduce himself instead, and then began doing so. Strahd warned that the party had best respect him, as they knew not who they were dealing with. The party agreed. They did not know who they were dealing with, because he had not introduced himself. At that point, Rahadin scurried up to the party quickly to beseech them to avoid antagonizing Strahd further for the time being. Strahd began to launch into a story that the party had already learned from his journal about how he became some kind of vampire incel when Tatiana died or whatever. It's in a previous video, you can find it, just take the link and go out and come back, I trust you. He also bragged about his 3 brides seated at the table. Giles began to ask a question, but Strahd, sensing what he was going to ask, declined to teach Giles how to meet women. Strahd began to talk about a tower to the west of Vallaki, a tower in which a vampire hunter named Von Richten resided. Strahd told the party that they would be in his good graces if they were to kill the vampire hunter there. When asked what they would get in return, Strahd said that they would be in his good graces. Growing frustrated at the party's constant interruptions, Strahd once more launched into a story as the whole table groaned. He told the story of how he flooded the town of a local baron who wronged him. He hoped the party would get the message. Giles clarified if he meant he would flood the party's town? Upon hearing that, Strahd, a man of 7 feet, stood and walked over to Giles, placing his hand on his shoulder. He asked Giles if he had any more witty comments. Giles pointed out that he actually did have another 1 or 2, at which point Strahd gave up and slapped him for 15 damage before returning to his seat. After more torturous banter that Strahd deeply regretted allowing, he finally declared that he would retire. He told the party they were welcome to stay the night, but warned them that the castle was home to all manner of things that posed a threat to them, so he advised against wandering around. As he left, the party decided that surely he had retired so early because he needed time to go cry in his room about how nasty the party was to him all night. Free to roam the castle, Rahadin indicated where the party's chambers were, which the party promptly ignored. They instead walked downstairs to a floor which was partially submerged in water. Ignoring Strahd's very clear warning, the party smashed open the door and found a man inside. He introduced himself as Emil, a werewolf. Otto became excited before the prefix where could even finish being uttered. Otto decided that it would be good to free Emil, but unfortunately that plan ended when he learned that the door was locked. He put his hand comfortingly on Emil's shoulder, apologized, and admitted that if the quest was to be more involved than opening the door there and now, then Emil would probably never see the party again. He did not like the sound of that. The party departed, with Giles promising that for as long as he lived, he would have intended to free Emil. Exiting the room with the cells, Otto scouted beyond the door at the end of the hall, discovering a flooded room. As the party slowly moved towards the door, suddenly a trapdoor opened under Giles. He fell through the darkness and landed in a cell next to Emil. Back in the hallway, the party suddenly saw Giles fall down a hole in the floor into nothing, and then heard a faint, "Aw, beans," from the cells, so they returned, only to find their friend locked inside and themselves unable to find the key to open the door. Emil chided the party that the shoe was now on the other foot, to which Giles, angrily, said no, the shoe is now on more feet. Needing to find the key, the party members who weren't locked in jail decided that they would investigate the room at the end of the hall to see if they could find a key. However, as they stepped into the room, green slimy ghouls began rising up from the water. The party rightfully decided to cheese it, with the intent to hold up at the end of the hall to fire on the slowly approaching ghouls. As the party retreated along the hall, the first one fell through a trap. In the jail, blind to all this, suddenly a ghoul fell into a jail cell across from Emil and Giles, and both began to panic. Giles cast Flaming Sphere to Qui-Gon Jinn the lock open so they could escape. Suddenly, 2 more ghouls fell into traps, fortunately landing in empty cells. It was at this time that Mbappe and Otto realized they needed to get Giles out of there. Otto managed to sever the leg of the lead ghoul, causing it to stumble and fall into the nearby trap, right into Emil's cage. Giles applauded and moved his flaming sphere over to Emil's cell, figuring it would either kill the ghoul or offer Emil a clean way out. In the meantime, he managed to kick open his melted lock and made his way out of the cell. In an attempt to disorganize the ghouls, Giles cast Turn Undead, which only had the effect of causing them to, well, turn, because they were too powerful. In their confusion, 1 more fell into a trap hole, landing in Giles' cell. He breathed a sigh of relief that he had managed to free himself, before the reality set in that having freed himself meant the ghoul was also free to walk out with him. Fortunately, the party had a minute of the spell's effect, so they informed Emil that they were leaving since it looked like he had his situation under control, and it wasn't like the ghouls could pick a lock to get into his cell anyway. And with that, the party went upstairs. Upstairs, the party found Rahadin and informed him that there were ghouls downstairs. He confusedly asked what they expected, and then told them usually in the castle, stairs going down were bad, unless the party was upstairs, in which case a stair going down was probably fine. He informed the party again that they were allowed to stay the night, and he would fetch them in the morning when it was time to leave. When the party asked if they could visit Strahd's bedroom, he said they needn't worry about finding it, which of course resulted in the party assigning finding it as their top priority. As the party pried further, Rahadin departed, as he foresaw the party's line of questioning was not going to end unless he forcibly severed it by walking away. Obviously, the party wasn't going to just sleep for the night, so they went upstairs since Rahadin told them going upstairs was generally safe. Upstairs, they found a hallway with frescoes arching overhead and suits of armor lining the hall. As the party cleared some of the dust, Otto discovered a secret door. As they opened it, they saw a strange creature facing away from them, scratching on some paper with a quill pen. Giles cleared his throat to alert him to their presence. He turned around and introduced himself as the accountant. He warmly greeted the party, announcing that he hadn't had visitors in so long, as he hadn't left the room in forever. Giles noticed that he was conspicuously chained to a spot on the floor and said that was probably why he hadn't left. The accountant complimented his powers of deduction. The party learned from the accountant all about Strahd's finances, including a number of treasures. Most notably, he informed the party of the Sun Sword and told them they could find it in Lake Zarovich. The party thanked him and returned to the main room, eventually finding another secret path by which they wound up on a walkway on the exterior of the castle. Happily continuing to explore, the party soon met with Rahadin, who looked notably more concerned than the previous time they met. He told the party that maybe it was really time to really consider going to bed. Naturally, the party took that to mean that they were very close to Strahd's bedroom. Brazenly ignoring Rahadin's warning, the party continued around the walkway until they found a way to re-enter the castle. Inside, they found a very lavish room with a painting above the fireplace that bore an exact likeness of Irina. Otto began reading a book titled Balthazar's Guide to Fine Wines, while Giles picked up Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which was a bestiary book. In it, he thumbed to the page on vampires and began to read aloud to the party, noting that they are allergic to sunlight and water, can polymorph into bats, can misty step through walls, cannot come inside without an invitation, are harmed by running water and wooden stakes, are hypersensitive to sunlight, and then in a cold voice from around the corner, the party heard,
"And we are also not fond of garlic."
Striding into the room, Strahd inquired what the party's interest in his kind was, requesting that they not mistake his candor for fear. The party assured him that as he snuck up on them, there was no risk of that misunderstanding. He turned to Giles and commented that he enjoyed watching him in the prison, and found it amusing to see adventurers immediately go straight downstairs without thinking. Giles asked if the party was close to finding his bedroom. No sooner could he finish that sentence than Strahd's hand whipped across his face, knocking him prone and taking most of his health along with it. Otto turned to ask Strahd what happened to the mystery gang. Strahd chuckled, saying,
"Ah, but Otto, you should know. You encountered them but an hour ago downstairs."
Though the party was visibly shaken, Mbappe warned Strahd that he had created a great darkness in Dark Velma. Strahd conceded that yes, there was another power in these lands that he had recently been made aware of, but not even he could know her desires. Strahd turned to the party again, asking if they knew what she could possibly want. Mbappe asked what the party would receive in return for telling him, but Strahd replied that he felt he had been most forthcoming with information up until this moment, and hoped that the party would return the favor as friends. As though sensing a retort coming, Strahd kicked Giles, dealing enough damage to send him into a death saving throw, which he failed. Satisfied that the party knew little more about Dark Velma than he, Strahd announced that he would allow the party to sleep where they were, and that he would retire. As he retired through the doors, Giles whimpered to himself, "I was right." As he left, Rahadin returned and asked why the party insisted on antagonizing his master, making it clear that he was talking to Giles. He strongly advised the party one more time to sleep and depart in the morning, realizing that they must not return again without invitation, lest it be at their own peril. And with everyone stabilized, the party went to sleep. In their sleep, they shared a dream in which Dark Velma came to them, saying not to trust Strahd's lies, and to stay true to their values, and they would find salvation in these lands. As the dream ended, Velma faded into the sun, and the party began to notice the smell of morning dew as rain washed over them. They opened their eyes and saw the castle looking down on them, and they realized that they were now outside the castle. Realizing they had meant to get some clarity on the local economy from Strahd, the party decided to walk up to the castle to ask a few more questions. One can only wonder how they envisioned it going in their heads.
"No, thank you. We don't want any more visitors, well-wishers, or distant relations."
And what about very old friends?
Mbappe!
My friend.
But in reality, they were met with silence, so they concluded it was time to leave. The party decided that since they were in the area, now was as good a time as any to head over to Old Bone Grinder to give the hags the 100 gold from their sale of the dream pastries, in exchange for the dream pastry recipe. Rather than walking, the party decided it would be good to get horses from nearby, and they just so happened to find a couple. Mbappe said he would take care of the third by casting Find Steed to find a fine steed, which ultimately wound up being a skeleton horse. Otto, being the ranger, went over and took some grass to the horses. He sexed to the first one. No, not like that, you pervert, although he did notice that it had a massive schlong.
Ah, a stallion.
He mounted his horse, which he had now named Chestnut because it loved a good nut and a good chest. Giles similarly sexed the other horse, for some reason, noting that it was a woman. Giles dabbed his forehead with his kerchief and mounted the horse. When asked what he would name his horse, he shakily said, "Vagila?" As the party pulled up to Old Bone Grinder, they were greeted at the door by Morgantha, who said she didn't think she would ever see the party again. After some quick negotiation, Morgantha agreed to teach the party how to make dream pastries, although she noted that the price of actually being able to make them is very high. The ingredients could be found easily enough, but the party lacked the vision. As it was clear the party wasn't getting it, Morgantha sighed, took out a bag, and showed the party an eye. Although the party was suddenly very against this cost, Giles decided that they had come this far and it would be a shame not to uncover the secrets that they sought, so he agreed to do what needed to be done. With a deft prick from her bony fingernails and a good save, Giles's eye was replaced, allowing him to see the invisible children bound and gagged in the corner of the room. Morgantha smiled at him and said he must be wondering now why they called it Old Bone Grinder, and suddenly the purpose of the grinding mill in the center of the room became clear as day.
Alright, dearies, it's time to learn how to make dream pastries. Giles, I'm going to want you to get that kid over there, because we're going to want to grind his bones. And
Wait, what?
go ahead, Giles. This is an important first step.
I do not like this. Maybe if the child was evil or something.
Hey, you're not like a serial killer, are you?
No, please, let me go home. I'm scared.
I don't know.
What a shame. I thought you could become a great pastry chef, but it seems like you're just a pussy.
No one calls me a pussy. And he threw the child into the bone grinder.
No, wait, you have to kill it first.
With what? Can you help me?
Absolutely not.
Okay, thanks, buddy. And Giles cleft the child in twain and threw him into the bone grinder, much to the chagrin of Otto and Mbappe. Next, after grinding the bones for about 30 minutes, the dough was ready.
Okay, next we need the dough.
Of course we need the dough.
Let's just get baking.
Believe in magic. Don't bother to choose if it's jug and music or rhythm and blues. Just go and listen. It'll start with a smile that won't wipe off your face, no matter how hard you try. Your feet start tapping and you can't seem to find how you got there. So just blow your mind.
The party had now gained the knowledge of how to make the dream pastries, and as a token of goodwill, Morgantha even allowed them to keep the entire batch that they had just created with her. The party quickly evaporated this goodwill by asking what the typical price point was, very transparently, so they could attempt to undercut her. This was met with an answer of,
Get out of my house.
and the party found themselves outside. The party knew they needed to head west to the Vampire Hunter's Tower, but like with all requests from Strahd, the request didn't seem to be that urgent to them, so they instead elected to head to Lake Zarovich by way of Vallaki, where they would leave their stockpile of dream pastries to sell later. And so, presently, the party arrived at Vallaki with a big bag of illicit drugs in tow. Weird, did anyone else just get deja vu there? Anyway, at the Blue Water Inn, Danica asked if she could try some of the sweets that the party brought, and the party said that she, under no circumstances, should do that, lest they be required to grind her up into the next batch. Giles's conscience pointed out the hypocrisy. Unburdened by their cargo, the party made their way to Lake Zarovich. The guards along the way noted that not many people go that way these days, save for old Bluto, that old drunkard going up to fish. Sure enough, when they got to the lake, they noted but one boat out on the Erie Lake. Naturally, the party hopped into a nearby rowboat and began to approach. Mbappe was overjoyed to be back on the water once more. As the party approached the rowboat, they saw the shadowy figure in the boat toss a body-sized parcel overboard. Thinking fast, but not too fast, Giles dove into the water, a little too far from where all this had taken place. Coming closer, Otto took his chance to gracefully dive down into the water after what they now determined was a young girl. On his way up, Otto began struggling due to the depths that he had to reach. Mbappe dove in to save them and began pulling them up, though light was fading from the girl's eyes as they climbed towards the surface. Mere feet from the top, it looked like the girl wasn't going to make it despite the help of Mbappe and Otto. Thinking quickly, Giles realized he could help as well. Casting Destroy Water, he cleared some free air for the girl so that they could make it to the surface, and then guided the flow of water to take the now empty rowboat over to Mbappe and Otto. As Mbappe revived the girl, old Bluto began rowing away. Unfortunately for him, however, he had not begun to do that soon enough, and Giles continued to direct the flow of water, drawing his boat back slowly towards the party. He pleaded for his life, saying the party knew nothing of fishing and that the girl was just good luck as all Vistani are. Needing a second opinion, Mbappe shook the girl awake, and she began to describe how she was gathering lilies for her mother, when suddenly she was bonked on the head and woke up in the water. Recalling Madame Eva's fortune,
The Vistani have what you seek. A missing child holds the key to the treasure's valise.
the party was inclined to believe what the girl was saying. Sensing that he was losing the party, old Bluto's ravings began to get more and more deranged and, frankly, racist. The party came to realize that there would be no reasoning with this man. His fate was finally sealed when the girl mentioned the Sun Sword and that her caravan may know where to find it. The party beckoned old Bluto to come aboard as it was time to arrest him. He angrily told the party that he wasn't going anywhere with them, to which Giles said, "You're quite right," and cast Flaming Sphere on old Bluto's boat. Diving for safety, old Bluto was suddenly an open target.
He was vicious and a killer, though a youth of 24, and the notches on his pistol numbered 1 in 19 more. 1 in 19 more.
With old Bluto blasted to Pluto, the party returned to shore and saddled up once more, promising the girl who now introduced herself as Arabelle that they would take her back home. And so with that direction, the party set off to the east once more. Along with Arabelle, the young Vistani girl, the party arrived shortly at a camp on a hill. Approaching the center tent, they heard the crack of a whip and the howls of a young man from inside. Arabelle noted that the tent was the home of her father. Inside, the party found 2 men whipping a third. Upon investigating, the party learned that the whippee, if you will, was being whipped because he failed to watch the daughter of the whipper. Eventually, putting 2 and 2 together, the party presented Arabelle and asked if that was the man's daughter, and a heartfelt reunion ensued. The father introduced himself as Luvash and warmly thanked the party, asking what happened to Arabella's captor. The party informed him of old Bluto's suicide, 2 gunshot wounds to the back of the head. Tragic. Asking if there was any way they could repay the party for Arabella's safe return, the party mentioned Madame Eva's fortune. Luvash was very familiar with Madame Eva, a resident of their sister camp just off the 45, when you get to the 2. He supposed that the party would find the fortune they sought in the Vistani's weapon room. In the weapon room, the party saw many great treasures, but naturally, the glowing sword, obviously the Sun Sword, caught their eye first. Asking about it, Luvash inquired as to what their interest was in the weapon that once belonged to Strahd's brother. That, of course, only made the party more agitated as they asked again for the sword. As Otto asked Luvash about the sword, Luvash made the critical mistake of turning to face Otto, and in that split second, Mbappe had the chance he needed. He didn't even need to process what was happening before he reached out and pilfered the sword, immediately turning to Giles, nodding, and walking out of the tent. As he got about 50 feet away from Otto's conversation, Mbappe broke into a dead sprint and didn't look back. Otto, meanwhile, was looking into buying some armor from his new friends. However, this was interrupted when Luvash turned his head to notice the Sun Sword was gone, and with that, Otto cheesed it as well.